Okay, everyone, good morning again. Thank you all for joining us today. Today, we have Daniel Olexa, who has been a coach all of his life. He started his official coaching career in 2017. In less than 7 years, he earned his MCC credential, coached hundreds of clients, trained over 3,500 individuals around the world to become coaches, and mentored nearly 100 coaches to achieve their credentials with 100% success rate. We are so lucky to have you today. He is the founder of Transcendent Living and believes in everyone's ability to live beyond normal outcomes, the definition of transcendence. If they are committed to changing their being through examining their stories of worthiness and self. Daniel is a 3x Amazon best-selling author, corporate trainer, and keynote speaker. His motto is, extraordinary people do extraordinary things. Awaken to your gifts. So Daniel, the floor is yours, and please have a look at your chat. Feel free also to put your questions in the chat box, or Daniel will always ask you to open your microphone and give your feedback. So Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ronnie. It's an honor to be here, particularly since ICF Orange County is my home chapter. Even though I now live in northern Sonoma County, surrounded by wine, and there was enough of that over the long holiday weekend, but ICFOC is still a very special place in my heart. So this is a really wonderful, wonderful morning for me. If we get ready to drop into the presentation, so we have an hour today. I'm going to go through the pacing and ideally have a little bit of time at the end to do a demo or answer questions, however things flow. There'll be, as those of you who've had me in previous classes when I used to teach, know that I have a very conversational style and I throw to the room a lot. I feel like that's where the learning really begins to anchor, is in the conversation, and we'll start with that very quickly. So feel free to either use the digital hand, or if I might see you if you wave. I might not see as much if it gets dropped in the chat, but Rania will be checking that for me as well if something gets dropped there. So let's do this thing. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. This is exciting. So the 3 A's, adjectives, adverbs, and absolutes. This is a concept that has been percolating in my mind for probably 2 or 3 years, honestly. And it really came and solidified in December last year, January of this year, into a presentation as I really woke up to what is possible in exploring these words. So Ronnie has already done the introduction. I'm not going to read over this slide because now it's redundant. I'm a guy who's done some stuff. We'll leave it at that. But let's look at that last paragraph. That I believe the true superpowers of coaching are presence, silence, and skeptical curiosity. Do you see the adjective? And here's where I throw to the room for the first time. How is skeptical curiosity different than just plain old boring curiosity? Which is also, how is skeptical curiosity different than plain old boring curiosity, different than curiosity? I qualified on 2 sides there. What comes up for you?
You look at it all different ways.
What's that? I didn't quite hear it. It's not coming through.
I think she said looking from all sides.
Looking from all sides, yeah. Because sometimes skeptical, the word skeptical gets a little bit of a bad rap as I don't believe what you're saying, I'm skeptical of it. But how many individuals in this room have been doing coaching or have been in the service providing fields, whether it's therapy or counseling or other, to know the problem that walks in the door is not necessarily the real problem?
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing the whiplash head nod right there. Yep. So that's where I'm coming from with skepticism, more in alignment with, oh, now I lost his name. 5 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz and his son. The 5th agreement, be skeptical but learn to listen. Just that little bit of, it's not that I don't believe you, because what you're sharing with me, most like if you're here for coaching, you're looking for service, that yes, there's that, and there's probably something underneath it that's really the real thing. And a lot of that, if we look at the ICF journey from ACC to PCC to MCC, you somewhat notice that in the transition as well, where ACC is really the facilitation of the problem. What's the issue that walks in the door with the client? At PCC, you begin a bit of a hybrid of what's happening underneath it. What are the deeper emotions coming forward? So what's underneath the surface issue, and how might the client be sabotaging their progress? And then when you move to MCC, it's really about being in your intuition and coaching the person the entire session, rather than opening up with a problem and maybe having a switch somewhere in between. Can go lots of different ways, but it's kind of a really simplified way of thinking about that progression from one credential to the next to the next. So what's underneath it? And that's where the idea of this presentation really comes in. As clients, we all use qualifying terms. Qualifiers come from personal experience and/or expectation of what should be. They're personal because they're based on our experiences and/or our individual expectations. So as we notice them and ask into them, we can open up a deeper person-centric, or who-centric in ICF terminology, session and conversation that might get to something even deeper than this concert was terrible. All right, let's keep going. As I've already mentioned, they're qualifiers that offer an opportunity to dive deeper into evoking awareness at a personal level of how the client is using language to create their reality, or their perception of reality, because they're very personal choices. The objectives to understand the power of inquiry and exploration into the 3 A's. I'll come back to those 2 words in a moment. How to help your client create new awareness around their qualifiers, and then shift from what focus sessions of what's the problem to be facilitated to some sort of solution or action step, to who-centric conversations that really might open up an underlying why, an emotional reason for the client seeking to change their life. Really quickly, inquiry versus exploration in ICF terminology doesn't get talked about so much at ACC level, but it does come into play at PCC and above. Inquiry is one question into usually an emotion at PCC. Tell me more about that feeling. So 1. Exploration is 2 or 3 or more questions deep on that same line or that same situation. So tell me more about that feeling. As you're sharing that with me, what thoughts are coming up with you? As you're sharing that with me, how are you showing up in the world or in the situation when you're in that feeling? So we're getting a bigger understanding than just tell me how you're feeling right now. And both of them hit markers. Some markers are inquiry only, some are inquire or explore. So let's start with adjectives. Let's go way back to elementary school and elementary school grammar. Adjectives qualify nouns, things, to bring distinction to the item of how it might be different or how it's unique and special. We might have a physical object labeled with a physical feature, a blue car, a hot grill, old leather shoes, anything along the way, cotton shirt. Here, it might seem to be obvious. Oh, it's a blue shirt. Not a white shirt. It's not a black shirt. It's a blue shirt. But maybe there might be something deeper. Well, we might not just disqualify that, because maybe as we listen and listen with focus, the client stresses that adjective. It's real. I got to have a blue car. Notice something different about how you said blue there. Tell me more about that. So that would be inquiry into the space. And as I was creating this presentation a few months ago, that line alone helped me remember something that was part of my prior life work experience. The last company I worked for before moving into coaching, hypnotherapy initially, and then coaching. The owner, the co-owner, the husband and wife who owned it, in the late 1990s, when Chrysler released the PT Cruiser, if you remember that car, looked like nothing else on the road in the late 90s, but looked a whole lot like what was on the road in the 1930s. That kind of gangster style, rolled fender, the whole thing. The owner of the company, when it came out, his wife was telling me this story much later after he had passed, he had to have a black PT Cruiser because it reminded him of the cars he drove in his childhood. And then he had a street rod thing for quite a bit of his life. He was always into cars, but that car reminded him of those hot rods that he rode in his youth. And he wanted to reconnect to that. So in a way, black was part of the qualifier. It had to be a black one, wasn't blue or white or any other color because there was a distinction to that. And then depending on how we chunk it, PT Cruiser could be a modifier as well of automobile, but it's also a specific model within the Chrysler brand. So just thinking about that, it has to be a black PT Cruiser because there was an underlying emotional connection to a memory of the past. What's important? What's important to having a black PT Cruiser? Well, what if the descriptor isn't so much physical as it is theoretical? A loving spouse. We might each qualify loving differently. A toxic boss, we might each qualify toxic. Caring organization, ideal partner, disappointing menu. Here, the qualifier coming from an idea is most likely more important than the item being described. Because here it's either, again, based on expectation or experience of what has been. So we might lean into, tell me what loving means here. Tell me what toxic means here. And coming out of the ideas in those two slides, I put together this grid to really bring the idea forward. So down here in the lower left-hand corner, blue car, physical object, physical descriptor. As we move across, theoretical descriptor with physical item, an ideal partner. Tell me more about what qualifies ideal. How would you know that the partner is ideal? What would you be looking for in that person? As we move up the left-hand slide, physical adjective with a theoretical noun, a $1 million idea. So we have this quantity of $1 million connected to a theoretical concept of an idea. How do you know it's a $1 million idea? What makes that idea $1 million? There's a really famous one in this space. You might all know it. Does anybody remember the late 80s, early 90s, if you're old enough in the room to remember that far back? And there was a TV show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Anybody remember Robin Leach's famous sign-off? That's different than just a sign-off. It was a famous sign-off. Do you remember what it was? Champagne wishes and caviar dreams. So here are two physical descriptors, champagne and caviar, on top of wishes and dreams, because the wishes and dreams are going to be the ideas, the things that the viewers are going to be wanting to move into after watching, I think it was an hour show, maybe half an hour, of these lavish lifestyles, massive yachts, incredible homes, while they're sitting at home, maybe having a TV dinner. Like, here's this compare contrast. But evoking into that higher lavish lifestyle, how would it be different if we changed the qualifier to light beer wishes and hot dog dreams? Doesn't quite have the same drive anymore. So the theory, the physical, can evoke something much deeper in each of us and connect to that theoretical noun of an idea, a dream, or a wish. And then the last one, a bright future. The future has not been created yet, so it's an idea. And bright is a quality of light. What makes your future bright? How would you ensure a bright future? What's different about your bright future than maybe what you're living now? How do we move from where you're at into that bright future? What are some of the things that would bring it into being? What are some of the action steps to make your future brighter? So in these cases, we might want to explore the qualifier. Tell me more about the concept of ideal when it comes to what you want in a partner. Come back to that one in a moment. How is ideal different than your life currently? So here's something that isn't in existence yet. There's an idea. And then the tough question: to attract or manifest your ideal partner, who do you have to be? That's the gut check. That's the gut check of ownership right there. And one of probably my very first coaching client, we had been doing some work together, and it was on relationship work, even though I don't market myself as a relationship coach. It's part of life. It came into the room. It was what we were working on. And this individual came into the room very low energy that night. Not the same person I had experienced for about 2 months worth of work prior to that. Just really, and like, what's going on? Something's different. Frustrated over who they were meeting through dating apps they were using. All the good ones were taken kind of stuff, and not meeting anyone who kind of met their idea. So we talked about it a bit, and then I asked permission to do an exercise. They agreed. And I said, so tell me about you with your ideal partner. Just visualize that for a moment, whenever it's just, and they started telling me about that person. Tell me more about that person. What do you notice in the energy started coming up? They were sitting taller and taller, really getting energized, talking all about the other person, how life was wonderful and all those things. Okay, tell me about you there. I'm this, I'm that. I'm fit now, really owning the energy. Okay, anything else to know about this? No, that's it. Okay, so come on back to the room. And we talked about it a little bit. And then I had to ask the tough question that was really hard for me to do early in my coaching career. So that ideal partner that you saw in that vision, which version of you are they looking for? The version that was in the vision, or the version who's sitting in front of me now? And it was like, that hurt. But they realized they were in an energy of wanting someone to fix their life. And it was, this person's going to complete me and make it right, rather than, oh, wait, they're looking for the happy me, not the one who wants to be fixed, because they don't want to fix somebody. They want a mutual partner. And that was a game changer in how that person started showing up and vetting individuals in who they were qualifying to eventually be the ideal partner. Changed everything when they would go out on a date. It was fascinating to watch. There's the share button. So the not so obvious are adjectives that qualify theoretical concept. Bright future, we talked about that one. Lukewarm reception, smooth transition. So when labeling the concept with an adjective, there's an essence of the who that's coming forward. What makes the idea great or bad? Might be in a brainstorming meeting. That's a bad idea. Well, what makes it bad from your perspective? Why is a smooth transition important? Well, because I don't want to burn any bridges. I want to make sure that if I ever need to go back for something or get a recommendation, I can do that. And then coming back to ownership, what's in your power to make it smooth? Because we all know you can be the nicest person in the world, someone will have an issue with it somewhere along the line. So we can show up, our clients can show up with the best of intentions. It doesn't always mean that things will go smoothly. Let's just pause here and I'll do a quick check-in in the room. Any questions or anything coming up just as we're almost through adjectives at this point?
I just wrote down a quick note, like asking questions about the adjectives. For me, and just to go back a few steps, I love the way you said, ACC was facilitating the problem, PCC was getting deeper into the emotion, and MCC about coaching the person. So
Yeah,
can you pair how questioning about the adjectives is more coaching the person, not the problem?
Yeah, it's going to lean a bit more. It can appear at any, because you can always show up above your pay grade, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of approach to me will open up that deeper person-centric facilitation rather than, so tell me more about the concert.
Right.
What made that concert so bad in your mind? Or
Yeah.
what made it so wonderful? Now we're getting to the person's generation of their experience rather than, it was a concert. It was, we went to see this band. It lasted 2 hours and I couldn't wait to get home.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah.
I hope is not my experience on Saturday, because my wife and I are going to see Train in our REO Speedwagon down near San Francisco. So looking forward to a wonderful show. That is my expectation. Now, check with me on Sunday or Monday, and I'll tell you what my adjectives are to describe it.
Yeah. Well, and you just said an important thing. When your expectation, when reality doesn't meet your expectation, you know, you can talk about that, and there's always a lot of juice in there.
Yep. And then how, if the expectation was not met by the event, then how do we come back to what could the person do differently? What was their expectation? How did they generate their expectation, or where's that expectation coming from, in a way of what ideas are behind it? Maybe I just expected too much. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Right, back in we go. Oh, here's a fun one. This is where we wrap up adjectives. I want to be rich. Filthy stinking rich. Where would you start inquiring and or exploring? Because rich is a vague concept. It's going to mean different things to everybody. When I used to teach, I would joke that there's what I call the I want to be rich statements that say absolutely everything and absolutely nothing all at the same time, because we each decode it toward our definition of rich. And there's so many things that clients will say that are these vague generalities that we hear and don't dive into. But then filthy and stinking are qualifiers of that vagueness. We'll pause here for a moment. Where would you start? I want to be rich, filthy, stinking rich. Coach me, because I want to be rich. I want to be filthy, stinking rich.
Why is that important to you? What does that mean to you? I don't know.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
being filthy, stinking rich is awesome. I see all kinds of filthy, stinking rich people. They don't have a care in the world. It's awesome.
Mm.
But why is it filthy and stinking?
There's a really good question right there. Tell me more about that qualifier. And so now, full disclosure, when I was creating this presentation, and at the time did not know why I chose that statement until about the second presentation, and somebody asked the question Joanne just asked. And it was like, and there it is. And so these presentations actually become a bit of a therapy session for me, I'll be honest. I grew up in a house where both of my parents grew up during the Depression. Their formative years were during the Depression. There was a whole lot of blue collar lament in that house too. That anybody who is successful, manager above, and even worse if you're a business owner, the only way to be successful was to cheat people. So it was better to be honorable and poor than to be not so honorable and have affluence. And so this filthy, stinking thing came through. And I carried it for years. Evidently, it was still been lingering in the back recesses of my subconscious mind for this presentation to offer as that idea of, so what makes rich, filthy, and stinking? And in a way, it's abundant affluence, but there's this quality of something I don't want to be part of with it. It's a really interesting counterpoint that I think I'm still breaking down and understanding. But just tell me about what would make it filthy and stinking. Oh, abundant affluence. Well, tell me more about how that's filthy and stinking. It could be really an underlying belief that's sabotaging the person moving forward. In my hypnotherapy training, one of the things I learned was your subconscious mind will never allow you to become that which you resent. So if you have this underlying belief that the only way to get ahead is to cheat somebody and you don't want to be a cheat, you're going to sabotage yourself to be successful. Shows up in the work all the time. What's the idea that's holding the person back from the achievement? And it's typically this underlying belief that can come forward in coaching sessions when we slow way down and notice what's in front of us at each step of the way. Like when Hansel and Gretel were dropping the breadcrumbs, pick up that breadcrumb the client just dropped. Stay with that. Just stay with it. You will remember back to those earlier ones and be able to connect the dots. Let the client lead. It opens up so much, but really pay attention. Oh, this breadcrumb's rye bread. The previous one was Wonder Bread. What changed here? And when you notice those subtleties, things will change. When I used to teach, I would offer the idea to students, you have a half an hour in this session. If you're used to doing 1 hour sessions, do not feel like you have to run twice as fast. There's nowhere to be except the present moment. Go twice as slow. You'll get further. I offer that idea to everybody. Go slow. Be very intentional in your presence because there is nothing but the present moment. There's nowhere else to be but right here. You can always call back. You can always call forward, but you're doing it right here, right now. All right, let's keep it going. All right, as we move into adverbs, the adverb is not your friend. I believe the road to hell is paved with adverbs, and I will shout it from the rooftops, by Stephen King from his book On Writing, a Memoir of the Craft. King felt about adverbs the way that Hemingway felt about them, that they're lazy writing. Why would a writer feel that way?
Because they tell you too much.
Do they tell you too much, or do they tell you what you need to know?
Well, if you say the road to hell is paved with whatever, you're painting a picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the picture that you're painting is revealing a lot about you and your own perception.
Yep, exactly. So thinking about a writer, particularly a writer of fiction, is creating a world. They're world building. Their job is to create that world to be so immersive that the reader can experience it fully. Jonathan Carroll, who's one of my favorite writers, probably top 3, lives in Vienna, writes magical realism. His newest book came out last year, and I read it in December, wrote him a letter afterwards saying, I really loved this book, very personal experience for me, reminded me of this. And surprisingly, he wrote back. It was on Facebook Messenger, and thanked me for the words, thanked me for just how thankful he was that his work is being received and is being, welcome and changing people's lives. And then he said something in that message I'd never considered. He said, all writing, all books are a conversation between the absent, the writer, and the reader. I'd never considered that before. Here's the writer constructing a world absent of a reader, so that days or months or years later, the reader experiences it without the writer present to add any more to it. Conversation between the absent. So this idea of world building, the more complete that world is, the more immersive it is when it's generated even years later. Tolkien, any of them. My brain is just off. Tolkien, the Rings, the Lord of the Rings. There we go. It's back there somewhere. Think of how immersive that book is. 70 more years later, it was written during World War II, I think. Still, people are drawn to that and the world that's created, or even George R.R. Martin with Game of Thrones, same thing going on. So we take this idea of an adverb being lazy writing in world building. Now, when you're writing dialogue for a character who might talk in shorthand, great. It was a warm day. Okay, that describes the day. but it doesn't really pull it forward as an immersive experience. Let's go in here a little bit more. The child screamed. Now, you all might have an idea right now of a sonic experience in your mind. You might be even shorthand describing it. King might write it as something like, as the wail of sorrow reached its sonic pinnacle, it reminded me of the shriek of a banshee from the childhood, my childhood on the moors, soul-curdling, heartbreaking, and terrifying in its existential recognition of ultimate solitude. My apologies to Mr. King for attempting to write something in his style, but notice how evocative that is. There's something existential in that, where most of us would just say, unhappily, excitedly, joyously, annoyingly. We just shorthand it, but that's the comparison. One person might hear this, we could hear the same child yell, and somebody might think it's annoying, and somebody might think it's a joyous experience, all depending on where we're at in that moment. So adverbs qualify verbs, where adjectives qualified nouns. Rather than the thing, we're now talking about how an action is being done. They typically end in ly. You see the adverb in that sentence. A hotly contested football game, which hopefully the Kansas City Chiefs don't have a hotly contested one. They just win it on Thursday night, but we'll see where that goes. It's already being contested. What makes it hot, or what makes the experience more hot? Sneaking around secretly. Isn't there already a bit of secret in sneaking? What adds on there when we go to secretly sneaking around? Coldly or warmly rejected. Still a rejection. What makes it different? Coldly rejected, I never want to see or talk to you again. Get out of my face. Warmly rejected. While we were impressed by your resume, unfortunately, we do not have a current engagement that is a great fit, but we will keep your information around and an opportunity arises for someone with your background experience. We wish you the best of luck with everything, AKA the TNBT letter, thanks but no thanks. Experienced a number of those back in my youth of applying for jobs. And now it seems like since things have moved more into the digital realm, it's more likely you're going to get a ghosting, which is a cold rejection. Or is it? Are we assuming that it's a cold rejection because all we know is we didn't get a response? For me personally, it's really annoying. So there's my experience and expectation coming forward. That whole idea, in either way, we're being told, no, not this time around, but the energy coming from the other person and how we decode how they're saying thanks but no thanks makes it either warm or cold from us. Now, again, we're going to pull into this idea of theoretical versus a slight shift here rather than physical, realistic. So those that are theoretical come from self and experience. These can be powerful avenues. Ideally, I'd be making 6 figures by now. Ideally is a dream state. It's not here yet. How do we make it real? One. Or this one, this actually happened in a conversation with a client. Realistically, I'd like to be at a 3 by the end of our session. Realistically comes from a sense of what the client, the individual, thinks is possible from past experience. And it could be a limiting belief that's sabotaging the potential outcomes. I haven't experienced it before, so this is as far as I think I could possibly go today. We'll come into that one in a moment. Just a few samples of adverbs quickly, an A to Z list. This is in the handout, so I won't spend too much time here. Yes, it was really difficult finding one for X. I will admit to that. But all of them are these qualifiers that are so easy to slide under our radar. I need to get it done meticulously. I need to be meticulous in this. Tell me more about meticulous. How would you know? What are the qualities of that? So here's that one coming back around. Actual conversation with a client. I asked the question on a scale of 1 to 10. So it was kind of a relative, this was a reverse scale of 1 to 10 for the client. They came in at a heightened level of stress, wanted to reduce it. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you now? I'm at an 8 of stress. Where would you like to be at the end of the session? Realistically, I'd like to be to 3. There was something in the way they said realistically. It's like, realistically, I'd like to be to 3. There was some energy in it. Okay. That caught my ear. So realistically, where do you really want to be? Ideally, I'd say 0. Okay. We got 3. We got 0. What's our target? Oh, let's go for 0. Okay. 15 minutes later, we hit 0. When the client didn't think it was possible 15 minutes earlier. Realistically was the best they could do at a 3. Now let's sit with that for a second as coaches, knowing that you do not have to hit the session marker. You're facilitating a conversation that ideally, adverb, leads to that outcome. But how many times does the session wrap and the moment happens after the session? Because the client, you've held the space for it to begin to percolate up. And a day or so later, or maybe 2 hours later, it's like, oh, there it is. And the client sends you a message like, thanks, I just realized. So you're holding the conversation. But yeah, we ideally strive. There we go again. Ideally, we strive for it, but we don't have to hit it. Had we gotten to a 2, we didn't hit 0, but we were 30% improvement over what the client thought was realistic of just a few minutes earlier. A 1, 66% improvement. We got to 0. Could even ask, now, how is that? How else or where else is that idea of limitation showing up in their lives? How might they be not opening up to bigger possibilities because of their experiences up to the moment of what I can let go and what I can't let go of? So I offer that as an idea to everyone as well. It's okay to challenge. The client will go where they want to go. All we can do is offer the door for them to explore it, and they choose. Sometimes they don't choose right away. Sometimes it takes a few sessions of really getting that bond, getting the rapport, because we don't push them through it, that they open up and realize the space truly is a safe space for them to choose and have autonomy, and then say, today I'm going through that door. How's that landing with everybody? I just want to check in quickly. Okay, see a few head nods. Awesome. Let's keep rolling. Good. We can do this in 15 minutes. So then absolutes. Absolutes are totally logical fallacies. Do you see it? Absolutes, and if you study logic, particularly in philosophy, absolutes cannot exist. And that's a paradoxical statement because absolutes cannot exist as an absolute statement. It only takes one example that's outside of the absolute to break the absolute. I never get ahead. I always get burned. I don't want to be in this role forever. Every time I try, something happens, or I can't do it. We'll dial into that one a little bit deeper in a moment. But notice I never get ahead. Never. The absolutes might be based in our negativity bias. Your car always breaks down when we have somewhere important to be. That one's me. 12 years ago, when my wife and I started dating, I still drive the same car. It's a 2000 Jeep Wrangler. And because you can drive it with the doors off, it does not have one of those little buttons that says ding, 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 you left your lights on. So living in Kansas City at the time, wake up to a Midwestern morning that was cloudy and foggy, turn the lights on, be driving, half an hour to get to work. Sun came up, the fog burned off. Not thinking about having lights on anymore. And I would go out to start the car at the end of the day and go click, 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 click. Invariably, it would happen when my wife and I were either going to meet friends, go to a show, or have a dinner scheduled. And I'd have to call and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to be a little late. I'll meet you there. I need to get someone to run me to the parts store so I can get a battery and replace this thing. I'll be a half an hour. First time's a gimme. Okay, great. See you there. Second time starts a pattern. Third time, what do you think I heard? Always do that. When in reality, there was a 6-month window between each of those things. So it's not like I always do it, but I at least I could at least drive to work, say 180 days in between doing it. But it became this thing because there was an emotional quality, emotional connection to that day. So it burned into the memory a little bit longer. It was there, like, there's somewhere important to be. And oh yeah, Dan burned his car battery out again. In my defense, I don't do it anymore. I haven't done it for a long time. But about 4 years ago, I did it. I still heard, always do that. No, it's been 4 years. And then when I did it about earlier this year, it's like, you always used to do that. So it's slowly softening, but there's still this quality of it always, it being a Dan thing that I burn out batteries. Well, maybe it's, who knows? Maybe it's a new car thing. I don't know. I just love my Jeep. They can come from a sense of attachment to certain experiences that have a high emotional. I always cry at weddings, but they're mostly happy tears. So here we go into inquiring into the individual's perception of the absolute as a reality might bring that forward emotion, the underlying emotion up, that's creating this sense of hyperbole, that something happens all the time or it never happens at all. Because neither thing ever happens. There's absolutes in that. So some very common ones. As I wrote this, my goal was to group them into always, nevers, and then like the perfection idea, because perfectionism is an absolute as well. Things have to be perfect. If there's one little flaw in it, it's no longer perfect. Always, everyone, everybody, completely, all of them, each and every once, absolutely everything, absolutely everything. Never, no one, nobody cares. No one ever hears me. Not once has anyone ever listened. There is zero possibility that that's going to happen. I can't do that. Coming back to that one. And then perfection, 100, 110%. I'm committed 1000%. I will be here without fail. Okay. I'm totally engaged. Let's play with I can't for a moment. It may not seem like it. And this might be me projecting. To me, I can't is an absolute. When it's stated, I can't, let's say, I can't learn a foreign language. Let's play with that one. I have a little bit of a trigger around this one that I automatically go to a question almost all the time. See, I'm graying that. Is it that you can't or you haven't yet? Because by saying I can't do it, I am presupposing the future that I'll never be able to. And that's where I lean into the I can't statement being a statement of an absolute, because it's presupposing the future rather than I haven't learned to do it yet. But if I really applied myself, I probably could. I'm slowly, ever so slowly learning. So recognize that one, offer that one as a lens for all of you, because it comes up from clients so often, particularly when they get into that low energy and they're feeling the challenge. They've become Sisyphus pushing the boulder uphill and they're feeling the weight of it. And I can't. Haven't you gotten there yet? And then be there with that. What would it take to just park it for a moment and take some of the stress off, or look at how far you've come, kind of thing? There could be that lens. We tend to focus on the gap, and I can't tell you how many clients I see focus on the gap of I'm not there yet, but they forget all this distance that they've traveled, which was, looking back on it, is where so much strength can come forward. So since absolutes are fallacies, it might be important to challenge them to bring a balanced perspective. The simplest way: ask the absolute word as a question and wait for the client to answer. Just one word as a question, that slight vocal tilt up, and let it sit. I never have great relationships. Never. Just let it percolate. You could come in with a follow-up. If you never have great relationships, what kind of relationships have you been experiencing? And then we can begin compare, contrast. This is what I've been experiencing. This is what I want. Now, who do you have to be? How would you start vetting people differently? All of it. How are you creating this experience of not having great relationships? Bringing back to ownership. But it could open up just with that. Never. And notice, I've never realized this before. Realizing it now because I realized I said never. The hint of skepticism in that never. Never. There might have been. But that memory has been overimpressed, overwritten with all the things that aren't what they want. Maybe it ended in a way they didn't want to. Who knows? But for a while, there's probably an experience there that meets the idea of their ideal. Can light that up, might find a new path forward. And then another one is ask for definition of the term. I don't want to be stuck in this job forever. Forever's a really long time. That's until like the sun goes nova, the universe reaches absolute zero, and all life in the universe ceases to exist and it contracts back to an atom. That's a long, long time. What do you mean by forever? Oh, like another 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years. Where do you want to be in 4 to 5 years? Now we can start intentionally creating forward because it's gone from this perceived tunnel of stress in that soul-sucking job that we've probably all had at one point or another in our lives, of it's a tunnel that never ends and I can't see the end of it, to 4 to 5 years. Yeah, I can make this work. There's things I can do. Or if I don't want to be here that long, I can start, I want to get promoted, or I want to change companies, or I want to do something different. Can start constructing a plan that's creating forward intentionally rather than, yeah, I'm just here twiddling my thumbs waiting for the day to come at 5 o'clock so I can go home. Changes the energy dramatically. Dramatically. Adverb. So which one would you inquire about first? Your client uses both adjectives and absolutes and adjectives to describe their dilemma. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this one. I'm always taking care of everyone else. I can never find enough time to take care of my needs. Which would you question first, and maybe why? And wrong answers only. Where do you want to go?
I would say always.
Always.
I would say always is a more opening possibility than never.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Always taking care of everybody else. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, everybody. Who do you mean by everybody?
Uh-huh.
And also no time to take care of myself. So it never happened that you took care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And sometimes it's funny when we're in that. I am guilty of being in it. I'm human too. That I can never find enough time. When we're in that space, it's almost like the I want to be rich statement of this bubble of time has to be eternal to take care of myself. But when we really start asking into it, like 15, 20 minutes a day to come back to center, where would you find that time? When would you take it during the day? It takes us from this big idea down to the baby steps of self-care, where we build that muscle, recharge the battery, and suddenly, like, I got this. Any other questions along the way here?
I have a comment. One of the things that is coming up for me in terms of absolutes is I always talk to clients about the negativity bias of the brain. And I feel like that's where most of these absolutes are coming from. So I use that to like help them become aware of this is just what your brain does, doesn't mean it's real or true or any of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's kept us alive as a species for a really, really, really long time. Now maybe it's time to shift it a little bit. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Monica.
Yeah, I'm curious about, my first instinct was to talk about the never have time for myself as opposed to always. But getting into the sort of the transactional of where could you find time to take care of yourself, that feels very transactional versus transformational of the mindset of always and never. So would you experience going into always and never first, being able to see that those statements are very limiting beliefs, and they, like Sharon was saying, the Velcro for the bad,
Mhm.
and then allow to release that a little bit, then talk into so how could you take care of yourself?
Mhm.
And you pick it a little bit amount or a lot of them time or whatever.
Yeah, we could play with, and we could even go back to sitting with the absolute, the choice of absolutes and asking the client. So I'm hearing two different absolutes there. There's the always taking care of everybody else, and there's the never taking care of you. Where do we go?
Where do we go? Yeah.
Which one's most important for you to break down? Because they might go to self or they might talk the outward. We're probably going to get to them both, or one might open up the other. So if we go to the idea of the client being autonomous, allow them to choose when we've come to this crossroad. Are we turning left or are we turning right?
Yeah, kind of asking their permission. Are you okay to, like, you just said some really important things. Is it all right if we pick that apart? And then I heard always and
Yep.
I heard always and I heard never,
Mhm.
so I like where you're saying, ask the client, which
Yeah.
I'm an aspiring MCC coach. So I want to move myself up to that next level. And I'm actually really analyzing this idea of transactional versus transformational. So yeah, it'd be nice to plan out self-care.
Mhm.
And then next week, when you talk to them, or 2 weeks later, and they've done no self-care, then you're like getting into the more, what's really going on here that's holding
Uh-huh.
me back,
Yeah. Tell me more about that not plan and self-care.
Yeah.
Because now we're in that absolute as an experience again, and that's
Yeah.
that same thing that we were talking about earlier. Just because it comes up in the session, they have the intention to open it up in the next week, but then it doesn't. So what do we do with that? How do we open up that energy to awareness so they begin? Maybe they weren't ready yet. Maybe there's still some imposter, some limiting belief there of,
Yeah.
oh, but life happened and this person needed me. So they go right back to the taking care of everybody else. Then, okay, so what are you committed to here?
Right. Challenging them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Do the last two slides and then we'll close out. So if you've enjoyed, or if you have questions after, if something comes up, feel free to reach out to me through my email, daniel@transcendentliving.com. I do have a page on my website of free coaching resources, particularly for dedicated coaches who are in the ICF model, going forward for credentialing and going for that credentialing exam. I do have a e-booklet I put together that's free, decoding the ICF credentialing exam, and you can find it by shooting that QR code. It'll take you straight to it. There's also a video there that I did with a PCC level coach of our experiences taking the exam and how to prep for it, and also what you're going to experience in it. And there's also a link to a sample exam from an organization called Solutions Academy. That's a fun little prep test. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good representation. Not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form. Just want to make that clear. But I did find it to be a helpful prep for taking the ICF exam, which just changed a couple of weeks ago. So three fewer questions and 5-minute longer break in the middle. And that is it. Rania.
Wow, thank you so much, Daniel. That was really deep. And it's a good reminder of how attentive we should be as coaches. That was really deep. Thank you so much. And also the resources that you gave us and credentialing, a wealth of knowledge. Thank you. You are a charismatic speaker, and I can tell. I mean, wonderful. I enjoyed it myself, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it. So I just have some reminders for our, oh, I lost the page. Just give me a minute. About our September events. So I'll pull it. I pull this again. Just give me a minute. It just here we go. So tomorrow we have another multi-chapter event. It's a virtual meeting. The presentation will be about playing with the power of metaphors. So today we took adjectives and adverbs, tomorrow as metaphors with Lisa DeHart. That will be virtual meeting at 11 a.m. same time. So all what you need to do is to register online on our website, and then you will get the Zoom link and go from there. Also, there is also an ICF global credentialing. If you are working towards your credentials, that will be a series, part 5 of the series done by ICF. And these are on-demand videos. So you can always go there. You don't need to register, but you can look at those videos if you are working on your credentialing, renewing your credentials, if you just want to renew. Also, we have our in-person meeting. That's a mixer that you can come in a non-professional setting, and it's just as friends, meet other coaches, extend your network. That will happen on September 10th at 5:30 p.m. We are going to meet at Reunion Kitchen, and that will be in Anaheim Hills. Again, you can register through our website. And at the end of the month, the middle of the month, September 19th, we have our in-person chapter meeting that will be in Hera Hub, place in Irvine. We always meet there for our in-person chapter meetings. And this month, we have Angie Wisdom, who will tell us about cultivating clients through content creation and storytelling, how to get clients through social media if you want to use that. So we are looking forward to have you all in our events. Sharon, you want to add something? Yes, please go ahead.
I do. We just posted on our website today. If you are local and you are interested in joining our chapter for the Walk to End Alzheimer's in Huntington Beach, it's going to be on October 19th. And if you go to the website, there, register to be part of our team. And part of what we do as a board is try to create, community within the chapter. And also when the ICF, I think, contributing to your community. So this event kind of does both of those things.
Okay, perfect. So like I said, you are going to find the recording for this session on our YouTube channel. You can check it out, perhaps tonight or tomorrow morning, you will find it there. Thank you so much. By the way, we are going to send out survey for today's session. Please take the time to fill out the survey so you can get your credentials for attending this session. And also, we all learn from, your opinions that help us to plan for the future for 2025 sessions. Thank you again, Daniel, for being here with us. That was really enriching. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to seeing you again.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya.